Alex.
So today we're going to be talking about the Treatise on Happiness, question 4, article 8. Is the companionship of friends required for happiness? So whenever we look at a question, we want to be able to interpret it to its best of meaning. How do we do so? We have to be able to break it up into different pieces and go back to keywords that we can look at. So a huge key word within that sentence is the word companionship, which is the feeling of closeness with one another from being with one another for such a long amount of time. So whenever we see the word, companionship of friends, that's the mutual friendship based on love. So it's how well y'all know each other internally instead of externally. Can y'all both come to an agreement on each other's wills and desires? And can y'all both also provide mutual connection or that mutual and emotional support? So overall, we're asking ourselves, is that required for happiness? Is that necessary for perfectiveness, for happiness? And happiness in this case is the fulfillment of human nature, what it takes in order for a person to be completely satisfied and be fulfilled. So what this question is asking is, do we need friends in order to be happy? Or can we be happy solely based alone and by ourselves? Or what God has to give us, and that's the reason for why we're happy. So we're going to be looking at the different viewpoints of Boethius. He has two different viewpoints. And he is aligned with, yes, we need friends in order to be happy. And then we'll be looking at Aquinas' reply, which is he's semi on it, but he does lead towards no, we just need God in order to be happy. So whenever we look at this, we want to be able to interpret, what are they talking about? So throughout this text, they're going to be talking about, if friends bring us joy, then that's the reason for us being happy. That is the reason why we feel completely satisfied or fulfilled. And if they're only beneficial in this world, this is the other viewpoint. If they're only beneficial in this world, then how are they going to benefit us in the afterlife? Only God can benefit us in this world and in the afterlife because we're going to be rejoicing with Him. So therefore, no, we don't need friends in order to be happy. So as we look at Boethius' objection, which is objection number 2, we're going to be seeing his two different viewpoints and what he has to say. So his first viewpoint, he says, there is no joy in possessing any good without fellowship. So what does that mean? First, we want to look at the word fellowship. So fellowship as a whole, meaning sharing life with others and everything that has to come with it. So whenever I rephrase this sentence, it basically means there is no happiness in obtaining any good if I can't share the things I have with others. So that can be different things such as materialistic things, such as wealth, money, etc. And that can be virtuous thoughts and along with emotional feelings. So I can use an example. A great example would be, can money buy happiness? That's a great question that people refer to. So I believe that no, money cannot buy happiness, because at the end of the day, you're sitting in that room, isolated, you're alone, and you have no one to share that with. So what this is trying to bring about is, I need friends in order to be happy, because if I can give to them, or if I can tell them, I won't let that emotion build. And if I can give them materialistic things, I see them rejoice. And that's the reason why I will also be happy and see a smile on my face, because I see them rejoicing. That's just how human nature works and how a human naturally works in order to be satisfied. So then we want to look at his next viewpoint. So he says, and delight is required for happiness. So this is just another way of saying, delight is just another word for joy and is necessary for perfectiveness, for happiness. So what does this mean? So we know from this that happiness is complete fulfillment. And if that's the case, it must include emotional delight. Now, what is emotional delight? It just means if you can't be happy doing things you don't enjoy. So I can use another great example for this one. A 9-to-5 job. Say I work a 9-to-5 every single day in an office, isolated. I have no outside connections and I'm just working. So in a work environment, you want to be satisfied and happy there, because you plan to work there for a long time. You're not looking for another job. You go to college in order to find that job that you like. You find joy in doing it. Now, if you don't have any friends or no one to talk to, or just gossip, eventually, you're going to get bored of that job, and you're going to get bored of being there. And why would you want to be there if you don't enjoy something? You can't continue to do something. That's not how the human mind works. They want to be outside. They want to be outgoing. They want to be talking to different people. So in order to do that, you have to find those different people, which is what Boethius is trying to tell us. In order for us to be happy, we have to make new friends, we have to talk to different people, we have to share those feelings, and we have to gossip, etc. So whenever we look at this as a whole, we want to know what is this telling us? So we know from all of this that I've said that joy requires fellowship and happiness requires joy. Therefore, the companionship of friends are required. So if you can't enjoy something without friends, then ultimately, yes, friends are required for happiness. So now we know why he is aligned with, yes, we do need friends in order to be happy. Now we're going to be looking on the viewpoint on what Aquinas has to say in his reply.
Okay, so now moving on to the reply. So Aquinas actually did a very interesting division between the word happiness. Unlike Boethius just mentioned the word happiness, right? He said that we do need friends for happiness. But Aquinas decided to divide that word into perfect happiness and imperfect happiness. So now the question we ask ourselves is, what is imperfect happiness and what is perfect happiness? So imperfect happiness is the happiness of this world. The happiness that requires materialistic things like Roy was talking about at the beginning, like wealth or like the relationships and all those other things, that make us temporarily happy. And all those things essentially make us happy at the moment, right? But they don't fulfill us forever, right? Because we still experience a mix of emotions. We're not always happy. Sometimes we're sad, happy, angry, So yes, Aquinas does agree that we do need friends for that imperfect happiness, since friends can lead us to make good acts or good deeds. We help our friends out by maybe lend them a hand. Sometimes they need a get a maybe their oil change or etc. Stuff like that, simple stuff like that. Giving them food if they can't afford a meal that day or sort of something in those lines, right? So essentially, yes, we do need friends for imperfect happiness. But Aquinas also differs from that. He also says that we don't need friends for perfect happiness, since perfect happiness is found when we rejoice in God. And what does that look like? So when we rejoice in God, so a quote that really came into my mind was when Socrates said that the body is the prison of the soul. And for us Christians, we know that when we die, our body is left behind, but our soul is renewed and purified, and that's when we finally rejoice and are perfect with God. And we are eternally happy now, since our bodies are what makes us sin. Our bodies is what has to sin. And once you leave the sins behind, you are empty, but you are also full of happiness that God has given to you. And also, the reason why we don't need friends for perfect happiness is since God is truly happiness, He's perfect happiness. So why would you need anything else, right? So yeah, so I think Aquinas did a very good job differing perfect happiness and imperfect happiness throughout his reply. He made it easier for the reader to just overall understand this in a very simple manner.
Mm-hmm. So now we're going to be talking on how well Aquinas talked on his reply, and not only that, along with his objection to number 2 on what Boethius has to say. So I'm just going to give a quick summary on what he said on response to. So he's basically saying that good is not fully sufficient, which is not the case in God, where God is all sufficient enough. So this is Aquinas' belief, because he believes that, okay, God is all we need in order to be happy in this life and in the afterlife. So whenever we look at this, we understand, okay, He is all sufficient because He provides us happiness, and we don't need no one from the outside world in order to be happy. So that's just a quick summarization on what he has to say, and it was very quick because it's a very short sentence. So now we want to be able to judge him based on how well he replied as a whole, not only on his objection to Boethius. So whenever we look at it as a whole, we say that, okay, let's see different distinctions that he made. Okay, so he takes reason for needing friends, and he defends how it doesn't support the claim of are the companionship of friends required for happiness. So we know that, he knows that it doesn't defend the claim, and most people, whenever they talk, they give their opinion, which, yes, all in all, this is an opinion, but they just have that to rely on, and they have no complete background. However, Aquinas does, because he provides reason, and that's what most people do not do. They don't provide reason. They just solely give off their thoughts, and they let people feed off of that. But that's nothing you can refer back to. Next, he gives a philosophical distinction. So he says how happiness in this life is imperfect, but happiness in God is complete by itself and lacks nothing. So we are completely happy based on what God has to give us. And that's what his whole viewpoint is and why he talks about it.
Okay, so pretty quick on my end. Aquinas gave a positive act, meaning he didn't just give criticism, but he also agreed with Boethius, but in a secondary way, as we talked about in the reply, that he does agree that we do need happiness, right? But in an imperfect happiness. But he differs from that, saying that we don't need friends in a perfect happiness. And he also remained consistent with his metaphysics, meaning his conclusion, fits the logic of his entire philosophy. And he remained consistent that all perfection and final ends are fulfilled in God. And overall, all in all, he just remained consistent all around, and he just talked about how imperfect happiness, we do need friends for imperfect happiness, but for perfect happiness we wouldn't need friends, since God is the ultimate happiness.
Yeah. So basically, all in all, like he just said, he talks on why Aquinas believes we don't need friends, but he's semi on it. He gives reason why we do, which makes it a great argument. He gives reason why we do, and also why we don't. So that's what makes it a great argument, and that's wrapping it up. Thank you.
Thank y'all.